Perfect. Sweet. I think we're ready to go. Just going to turn it on Instagram as well. And perfect. Well, as people start trickling in, I see a few people have joined already. Excited about this. This is our second one that we're doing this week for National Infertility Awareness Week. To introduce ourselves first, hi, I'm Thiv. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Hera Fertility. At Hera, we're focusing on the male side of things and helping men become fathers with our testing solutions and care solutions to help them guide them in the right direction. And I have here Isla Armour. Sorry if I mispronounce it, but Isla is the founder and CEO of Fullwell. Do you want to share a little bit about yourself first?
Sure. Yep. Ayla Barmer, and I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for doing this week and all that you do for the fertility space, Thiv, and with Hera. I am the founder and CEO and the formulator of Fullwell. We provide dietary supplements for reproductive health. Specifically, I am a practitioner with over 20 years of experience working with couples struggling with infertility in practice.
Perfect. And I love what you guys do, and we're going to get into that and how you are different. But for today, we really want to go into some of these questions that we've gotten and talk about supplements. And I love this title because it really covers both what should you be doing and what you should be skipping when you're on your trying to conceive journey. And so I have a few questions to kick things off. And then in the chat, you guys can put your questions in there as you're going through to, give us any specific questions you have, and we're happy to answer it. We have about 30 minutes to go through all of them. So ready?
Yes, ready.
Good. Because time flies by and there's so many of them. So I think one question I'd love to start off with is, and I've been seeing a lot about this, is like there's so much conflicting info online about fertility supplements, both male and female side of things. Like, where should couples even start?
Yes, fair question. I know that navigating what to do in the preconception period, whether you're struggling with fertility or not, is frustrating and overwhelming. Back when I started this work, there was not as much information or frankly players in this space, right? Addressing fertility for men and women, and now much more so. What I would say is think about it in a couple of ways. So first, are you being, just being proactive and trying to prepare for pregnancy, and you are in planning mode and you just want to kind of check the boxes and make sure you're doing everything that you're supposed to do, which first of all, I commend. That's awesome. That's ideal. Or do you know that you have an issue with, let's say, sperm or egg quality, and has that been assessed? Do you know you've got vitamin and nutrient deficiencies or a thyroid issue or something where nutrition and lifestyle can play a really supportive role? When it comes to just preparing and making sure that you're in the best place possible for pregnancy, but you don't necessarily know or suspect that you have any issues, then I would say there's a couple places to start. One would be a foundational approach of a multivitamin and a omega-3 fatty acid supplement. These are well-researched, well-supported, foundational kind of approach for preparing for pregnancy. And that's true for both women and men. So men should be on a multivitamin and fish oil supplements just as much as a woman should also be. And good, well-designed multivitamins will hit on a lot of those key nutrients that are going to really affect and support those developing egg and follicles, as well as the developing sperm and overall semen quality. And that's what we really want. What's done in those 3 to 6 months prior to conceiving and even prior, really does set the stage in a lot of ways for the health of a pregnancy. So what I would say is for those folks, first start with a multivitamin and omega-3 fatty acid supplement. That's key. Even if your diet is pretty solid, you want to fill the gaps so that you're really optimizing things. And it's particularly for women, you're not going into pregnancy depleted. The other thing I'd recommend is getting some lab work done. and some nutrients that I would look at in particular would be both zinc. So getting an RBC zinc is a good idea. That's a red blood cell zinc, as well as a 25 hydroxy vitamin D. It's important that you get the right vitamin D test ordered. And so that's 25 hydroxy vitamin D. Almost everybody, I mean, I do live and practice in New England. And so, obviously vitamin D deficiency here is pretty rampant, but actually as I practice virtually, even around the world, it got to the point where I could really confidently say that there was nobody that walked into my practice that wasn't suboptimal, if not outright deficient in vitamin D. And vitamin D is critical for both women and men's fertility in a number of ways. And then I'm sure we'll get into it, but that's a good place to start. And then there's more specialty things that you can add on top of that, but don't start with, the colostrums and the greens powders and the, specialty products that you're not sure about with the formula. Start with the multi and the fish oil first.
Perfect. Super helpful there. And just a follow up, because I see one question that was given by a gentleman around multivitamins. This was specifically around, he's a guy who's taking a 1-a-day multivitamin. Is that enough, or do I need something specific for fertility? And so I think you were kind of alluding to that in the previous answer.
Well, it's better than nothing, but I always like to say we can do better. There's better, and then there's optimal, right? So while I would love to say that a 1-a-day covers you, I have never met a 1-a-day that really does cover anybody, or really hit on the specific, reproductive health supporting nutrients that are going to be optimal during this stage of life. Some examples of that would be, zinc, making sure it has enough zinc in it. I do like to see about 50 milligrams of zinc, which is a pretty high dose, in a multivitamin designed for men trying to conceive or influence sperm health. Vitamin D, I have no idea why there's such a range of random amounts of vitamin D in multivitamins. It really makes no sense, because that is the most well-studied nutrient that we have. And so, if you're seeing 400 IUs, 1,000 IUs, that's just not going to cut it. And so you might be looking at a separate vitamin D supplement, or one that contains more robust amounts, like a 2,000 IU a day for men, 4,000 IUs really for women is what's needed at a minimum. So, the problem with 1-a-days is it's very difficult to fit some of the most important nutrients to supplement with in just one tablet or capsule. They're bulky. That's the reality of them, and normally you're going to see B vitamins be in sufficient amounts, which is great. That's really important, but those are tiny. So they're easy to get in there. Things like magnesium, choline, calcium for both women and men, very difficult to fit into a 1-a-day. And so really, I tend to say that a red flag for a multivitamin is if it's only one a day, just because that kind of tells you that there's been shortcuts. They might hit different nutrients on the label, but doesn't have enough to actually move the needle. And that's really a key consideration here when it comes to supplementing. You want it to have enough if you're taking the time to invest in taking it, spending on it, right? Like, does it have enough potency? And then, the other piece to that is the form of the nutrient. So that can make or break and the delivery format, that can make or break how well you tolerate it, whether you'll stick with it. Tablets are probably the least well absorbed, of the formats, and 1-a-days tend to be in that format. Capsules kind of next. A powder is a little bit better. However, I'd be cautious with powdered multivitamins unless they come in a stick pack and are very well contained. You don't want to be scooping multivitamins out of a tub for a lot of reasons. Stability is one of them, as well as consistency with the dosing.
Gotcha. Just to follow up, a perfect segue to the next question that we have is around gummies. And we've been seeing a lot of that around male side of things too. So the question was, are gummy vitamins as effective as capsules or tablets? What's actually different?
I know. I know everyone's like, please say gummies are good. They're delicious, right? I think that gummies work for some ingredients well. For example, with Full Well, I formulated a nausea support gummy that has some botanicals in it like ginger, and that's really well suited. Those ingredients are really well suited for a gummy because they tolerate heat well. You can get the doses into that we need, just a few of those ingredients into a gummy serving. But the problem when you start to get into other more unstable nutrients or things like a multivitamin, right, is we really worry about the temperature and the heat, really the heat, light, and air exposure that comes through the manufacturing process of gummies. And that can really compromise the quality of certain nutrients. So it really depends on what you're supplementing with. But in general, you can't get the load, of, so the therapeutic dose, the dose is actually going to do something, according to the research, right, into a gummy. And we also worry about the stability. It's still relatively difficult to test potency and stability with gummies, just because of the lab methods out there. So it's not ideal. While it works for some things, I wouldn't rely on it if you're looking to get in a specific amount of, let's say, like CoQ10, a specific amount of zinc. You're going to want that to be in really like a capsule form.
Got it. Perfect. And then the next question, we're making up good time. We're covering a lot of questions here, so I really appreciate it. The next question I have here is around, the ingredients for men. And so we get this question actually pretty often. So CoQ10, zinc, folate, vitamin D, which ones actually have evidence behind them for sperm health? And maybe you can, maybe there's a follow-up of like, or you can answer it now about what are the supplements men should be taking?
Yeah. So actually you hit on, because this space, you hit on some of those nutrients that are particularly important. And I'm going to kind of go through what has the strongest evidence to what might be a little bit less so, but you still might want to consider, so that you can prioritize. Because when it comes to supplements, right, it does come down to prioritization, right? Like, you're not going to take 45 different things a day. You don't need to. At some point, it's kind of not, it's not going to have much more of a benefit, right? Once you get to certain thresholds. So first, I think I've already made the case for starting with a well-formulated multivitamin and fish oil supplement, that's got your B vitamins, your folate in it, has got some vitamin D, has got zinc. But on top of that, that's what we want to start to look at is, are there additional reasons why we want to support sperm quality? CoQ10 is a big one. This is really the most studied nutrient in fertility, I would say, aside from maybe folate. It fuels the mitochondria in sperm tails specifically, and it helps to really neutralize free radicals. So there's meta-analyses, there's RCTs, there's really strong data really looking at how well it improves sperm concentration, motility, and even clinical pregnancy rates. And the doses used in studies are around that 200 to 300 milligram per day. Sometimes practitioners like to go higher. I think sometimes you can go a little bit lower. It kind of depends a little bit on the form, bioavailability, quality, and all of that. But somewhere around there is a smart dose. L-carnitine is another one that has really strong evidence around supporting motility for sperm. It helps to transport fatty acids into the sperm mitochondria, and that essentially gives them fuel to swim. And we want to think about our mitochondria as, the batteries of our cells. And, both female and male reproductive cells, right, gametes, really have lots of these, batteries that need energy and support. The dose for L-carnitine is high though. So you're not going to see it in really significant quantities in something like a multivitamin. It might show up on the label, but you need 2 or 3 grams per day. So that's going to be, if I'm quick math, it's probably going to be like 6 to 8 capsules, right? So you're not going to see that really included in, meaningful amounts mixed into a multivitamin that usually has to be taken separately. Sometimes it's combined with acetyl L-carnitine, which does appear to kind of enhance the effectiveness. Selenium is another one that I really want to highlight. This is actually something that's really rich in Brazil nuts. In fact, it's so rich in Brazil nuts, you want to make sure that you're only doing like 1 or 2 a day and not like eating handfuls of Brazil nuts. Those are like the giant ones that are in the nut mixes. But selenium protects sperm through our detoxification systems. And again, meta-analyses, so some of our best quality research really shows that it improves concentration, motility, morphology. And it has like a broad effect on all of those parameters. And the dose is like about 100 to 300 micrograms per day, but don't exceed 400 micrograms. So this isn't one where you want to, go overboard with. Whereas B vitamins, you can kind of get away with that. Selenium's not one. It has a sweet spot. And then omega-3 fatty acids, specifically EPA and DHA. Those get incorporated into sperm cell membranes and they help improve the fluidity and function. And so studies really show some of the largest concentration gains of any supplement really happen with supplementing with omega-3 fatty acids. And the dose there is about 1.5 to 3 grams of combined EPA and DHA daily. Wow. I'll stop there because there's a lot of others. I mean, there's zinc, there's folate, there's NAC. Lycopene is another really honorable mention. About 10 milligrams of that is really great. We include 10 milligrams in our men's multi. So there's a number of other nutrients that can be helpful, but those are some top ones.
Wow. Okay. That's super helpful. Just a follow-up from that question is around still about supplements for men. Are there supplements men are taking that actually could be hurting their fertility or not helping that much? Maybe we could start with the hurting one because I'm curious on that.
Yeah, I think that if you're taking supplements that are displacing the ones that you really should prioritize, right? That I would say may hurt your overall fertility, in that there's only so much we can do in a day. And so I think if you're prioritizing like some sort of, let's just say like a protein powder or whatever, over taking a multivitamin and fish oil, then that's not a good trade. That's not a fair trade. Then I would just say quality and safety of what you're taking. It is, there is a lot of variability in this industry, and there are really good players and there are not great players, and there's everything in between. And so for me, it comes down to, and this is really why I never thought I would have a dietary supplement company. I was going to be a practitioner my entire career, but here I am. And really the reason why is because I couldn't get information from brands about how they were ensuring what was on their label is in every serving. So that relies on potency and stability testing. And that's what I would really look for in any brand you work with. They should be open and transparent about how they are ensuring potency, stability of their products. So essentially what is on the label is how they know, and how you know what's on the label is in every serving. The other piece to that is making sure that there's proper testing through a third party for contaminants of concern, heavy metals, in some cases, BPA and glyphosate and chemicals that would negatively impact fertility and sperm health. And so we don't want to be introducing things that could be harmful in our supplements when the idea is to help, right? And so again, transparency around those results and questions that you have is number one for a brand. And unfortunately, it's not incredibly common. If a brand says, well, we're XYZ third-party certified, or we've got this badge or whatever. To me personally, that's not enough because a lot of those third-party certifications require kind of the bare minimum, maybe like one lot a year, to really certify. And so your bar is whether or not these companies are open and honest and transparent with you about how they're testing, how they're ensuring safety.
Gotcha. Yeah, that was the next question I had there around how do you know which supplement brand to actually buy? And I think you gave some great tips there because if you even go on Amazon now, there's hundreds of options for them, and it feels very overwhelming even for someone who's in this space. And so documentation, it sounds like,
Mhm.
is one key piece there, looking at what their testing protocol is. What other maybe red flags
Mhm.
should they look out for?
Yeah. So, sometimes the documentation, I will say, is very complex and confusing and can look different from brand to brand, manufacturer to manufacturer, right? And so I do really empathize with people that just want to know what to take and not have to get like a master's degree in how to interpret these results. And so I appreciate that. It's just, I wish I could say that there was one badge, one thing that you could look at quickly and would tell you, okay, this is a good option. But unfortunately, some of the things that we could rely on in the past, like third party, independently tested, now is so pervasive in marketing language that, I even went to a conference where I was talking to a children's supplement line and asked them, they said they were third party tested. I asked them a little more about that. Turns out they weren't, and they didn't really understand what that meant. And so, it's a little concerning. So I think, doing interacting with the brand and seeing how open they are to answering your questions and making that assessment is really important. I think better yet, if they publish their test results, on their website, I think that's a really good sign. And we're not talking just like pass, fail, check mark, or we reached our internal bar. It's like, what are you using for standards for safety, right? This isn't just internal check and balance. I think that's really important. If there's a proprietary blend, that should not be the case for things that are meant to be therapeutic, like that you need to know the dose on, like folate, B vitamins or choline or vitamin D. That should never be wrapped into a proprietary blend.
Mhm.
That's a red flag.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
One area that we've been getting a lot of questions on, and a few people submitted, was around ashwagandha and maca. What's your take on those? Can they be helpful? Are there actually any evidence around it?
Yeah, ashwagandha has actually got a lot of good evidence. We've got, and maca. I mean, we've got historical use data, which is still very relevant to include in your assessment of whether or not an ingredient can be used for any number of things. And there's more modern, clinical evidence too to support both of those. I personally love ashwagandha for both women and men. It's an adaptogen, which is a class of herbs that is highly safe. You can't have an herb classified as an adaptogen unless it is going to be extremely safe and very gentle. There's a lot of misinformation out there right now about ashwagandha that I can't figure out where it's stemming from. I think it's just one of those things where it was sort of a clickbait social media situation where we're trying to get people to, creators are trying to get people to question this ingredient, when in reality, none of those claims of unsafety around or safety concerns with ashwagandha or even maca are really are valid at all. This is one that I feel really good about. So ashwagandha has the ability to really help our body deal with stress, in a lot of different ways. And stress is kind of the number one thing. You could put a lot of things in that stress bucket, but stress is one of the number one things that really negatively impacts both male and female fertility. So I did include it in our fertility booster, which is a product designed for both men and women. And really it can be taken, the dose varies, I think 250 milligrams all the way up to, 5 grams a day in divided doses is a pretty good amount for ashwagandha. Maca, I love as well. I think, that's something that I tend to use just as a practitioner. I would tend to use maybe more so with women in the preconception period or maybe postpartum, not ashwagandha and maca, not during pregnancy, but again, preconception, postpartum. And, more specifically for that, but ashwagandha is one that I love. And I think most people do really well with. Yeah.
Awesome. And then one question that's always fascinating is around supplements fit alongside fertility treatments. And I think it really stems to the question of what is there a difference in the supplements that I'd be taking initially to when I'm taking during IUI and IVF?
Yeah, that was probably one of the most common questions that I would be asked when I was supporting folks in practice, right? Is like, what do I discontinue? What do I keep taking? What does that all look like, right?
Mhm.
A lot of the work of supplements, diet, lifestyle is really happening in those months leading up to fertility treatment. And
Mhm.
so, it is not, it's perfectly fine to put a pause, on a lot of the supplements that you're taking for that period where you're actively getting treatment, or you're getting you're having the transfer, or you're having a retrieval. Like, that's
Mhm.
fine. I think most of the time, when I've collaborated with REIs, or clinics in general, some of the things that they might be concerned with would be the omega-3s and bleeding risk, wanting to kind of reduce that for a period of time. Really, it comes down to that. And I think, so I've had people handle it in different ways, and different fertility
Mhm.
clinics handle it in different ways, where some have no issue with them just continuing as normal throughout the process. Some fertility supplements you'll want to discontinue once a positive pregnancy test is confirmed, or
Mhm.
maybe really once a transfer has happened. So some of those more fertility supplements that might have like something like ashwagandha in it, or NAC, alpha lipoic acid, those things they did their job pre-conception, and now they can stop and you can transition over. So I think it's really important to coordinate with your fertility clinic and provider on what they feel they're comfortable with, alongside, if you're working with a practitioner who's helping you navigate the supplements and diet and lifestyle piece. Mhm.
Perfect. I think we're getting close to time, so I wanted to. I think there was a couple more left. One that I really want to make sure we cover is around a question that came in around diet and meal.
Mhm.
And so, what's a meal you'd actually recommend for a couple trying to conceive? And yeah, just how should they be thinking about their diet, really?
Oh yeah. Well, I love this question as a registered dietitian. I think the good news is that a lot of the things that support female fertility also support male fertility. There is absolutely no need to be going on separate diets. There's no need for extremes either. That is a red flag. So if someone is saying you should be going on a juice cleanse, or you should be doing an extreme detox, or anything that's kind of like, all right, this is a lot and this is going to be really difficult, that's a red flag to me, because we're really talking about adding in the right stuff when it comes to fertility to support the body. You need a lot of resources for reproductive health. And so some things that I love couples to focus on, like an ideal meal, and I wouldn't say like this doesn't need to be every meal, right? But like one example would be some sort of seafood, right, which is going to be rich in omega-3 fatty acids. Maybe you have a date night with oysters, which are really rich in zinc. In selenium. And then you have lots of produce, colorful produce, on the side, which has got tons of antioxidants in it, some sort of, whole grain in there. Don't be afraid of that. Your mitochondria, those batteries, do need energy. So carbs are not bad. We want them to be nutrient dense. We want fiber, which is in your produce and your whole grains, and that helps support actually hormone balance and digestive health in a number of ways. And then I might say like berries and whipped cream, and like, something like that for dessert, and some chocolate, too, would be a really good example of a way to get in antioxidants, magnesium, and still have it be enjoyable. What I would skip would be the alcohol, unfortunately. I think this is a time to really cut back on that and enjoy some of the other really fun, like non-alcoholic beverages that are out there on the market now.
I love that advice. Um, and it's important to know both what to do, what to change, and what to remove.
Mhm.
One last one that I think is really important is around like some of these supplements can get really expensive.
Mhm.
So what are kind of the non to summarize kind of like non-negotiables you would say if someone's on a budget?
Yeah.
Yeah, how should they think about that?
Yeah, to summarize that, a multivitamin that is well formulated is going to be your best bang for your buck.
Mhm.
Focus on that versus any, individual nutrient. Omega-3 fatty acids I would put as the second priority. However, you can meet your needs through diet, but it's going to require 2 to 3 servings, good size servings of fish and seafood a week consistently in order to do that. So, there are some really fun options now, like tin fish, in different forms, right? And all kinds of ways that you can get in seafood. So you don't have to, it doesn't need to be salmon, 3 servings of salmon every week. It could be tuna, it could be any number of different things for seafood. But if, the omega-3s are hard to fit in the budget, then that's what I would say, really turn to diet for that. And so that would be what I would prioritize first before you go anywhere else. The next thing would probably be iron, and that's probably more so for women than men. Women are more likely to be deficient there. So ensure that looks good. Enough vitamin D, and then from there, that's where I would go to like the CoQ10s and the antioxidants. Those are going to be your expensive, supplements for the most part. And so really your body is doing a lot of work and getting a lot of benefit from just getting all of those nutrients in first. So start with a multi, then a fish oil, and then go from there.
Perfect. I really like that. And to wrap things up, I always like to ask this question, something around this. So this is really more of my question. But for someone who is watching right now, who's been trying to conceive, is on their journey, what's the one thing you'd like to tell them to start or stop taking or just think about as they're going along in this journey?
I think my overarching message, though, is really that perfection is not necessary in order for you to get pregnant and to have a healthy pregnancy. It is, the amount of information we are all bombarded with and now is entering the fertility space about what you should and shouldn't do. And it is wildly confusing. And so I just want to acknowledge that perfection isn't necessary. Take a deep breath. There are a lot of practitioners that would love to support you and sort through and help you prioritize, many of which will take insurance. We have a practitioner directory up on Fullwell. I'm sure if you guys at HERA connect with practitioners too when needed. But, we've got one where you can get that nutrition and lifestyle support to help you navigate what to kind of do. So I just want to start there. I would do a little bit of an inventory of your supplements. Sometimes that supplement cabinet can get a little wild, and there are things in there that, first of all, take a look if there's anything expired or beyond the best by date, because that does matter when it comes to supplements. I am not a big fan of like your greens powders. It's a really nice idea, but in general, those don't move the needle. I also think that maybe colostrum products are being kind of overdone. They're very expensive, and I don't think those really move the needle when it comes to fertility. But there's always kind of individual reasons why someone might choose various things. So, first and foremost, you want to invest in your diet. What the foods that you're eating, and what you're bringing in, and that way have that be the base. And then, as we already talked about, prioritizing supplements from there.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for all this great information. I think I learned a lot even on this. And so where can people learn more about Fullwell? And I know you guys provide a lot of educational resources. So how can they reach out to you guys?
Yeah, so you can find Fullwell. We're at fullwellfertility.com. We also at Fullwell Fertility is our social handles. We have a lot of resources, as I mentioned, a practitioner directory, as well as, articles and various types of education through the Knowledge Well. I have a Substack for those that want to go kind of deeper on the whole context and landscape of fertility. And you can find that under my name, Ayla Barmer. But thank you so much for having me.
I didn't know about your Substack, so I'm going to check it out too.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you taking the time, and super excited about all this. And thank you again.
Thank you.